Hey guys, what's up? So this is definitely one of the most requested videos because I guess all of you are also wanting to know how to create your own commercials, right? And this is something that was shot on a Sony FX3 in S-Log3 10-bit 422. If you want to try out the footage, I guess I'll put the links in the description below or above. And that's about it. So let's get into the grade. So to start off any grade, usually I like to run through the clip a few times to choose my hero frame, which is the frame that I want to grade on. So I've picked the first frame right here. After that, we will build out our node tree. As you can see, my node tree is already built out because I want to save some time for you guys. So we have a total of 10 nodes. The first node is our highlight, the second node is our primaries, then contrast, then I have a mixer node, then a look, then also a skin and subject in a parallel nodes with a mixer, then details and the color space transform. So you can pause the video right here and copy down the nodes if you want. So we start off with the color space transform. I will just go into the effects tab and throw in the color space transform effect. So what it does is convert it from S-Gamut3 Cine, S-Log3 to Rec 709 and Gamma 2.4. So for tone mapping, you can either leave it at Davinci or maybe luminance mapping. Maybe not none. So it depends on which one that looks better, because luminance mapping, they will preserve your highlights supposedly. For Gamma mapping, you can leave it at none or either saturation compression, whichever that looks better to you. And for the values, I'll leave it and also apply forward OOTF, and the others I'll just leave it. So that's all for the color space transform node. So now we got our footage in a Rec 709 color space. So right now the blacks are a bit lifted. So I want to go into my primaries to drop down exposure of the whole scene. So I'll drop it down to maybe like 20. Here's the before and after. Okay, so after that I want to also add a bit of color boost, maybe 5. Yeah, the values I just like play around with it, but usually I like to make it whole numbers because I have a bit of OCD. Yeah. So the blacks are still not as black as I want, so I really want to target it. So that's why I go into shadow and pull it down a bit. So I'll go a bit over and then come back up. So about negative 0.02 will do. I don't really want it to be touching the bottom. I just want it to like float right above the 128 point. So next node is contrast. For contrast, I like to use my curves. But don't forget to turn on the editable splines so that you have this like spline to pull up and down, so you can make the curve more curvy. So for my highlights, I like to pull it down and then use the spline to lift up the exposure. And you can adjust it until somewhere that you feel is comfortable, that is bright enough. And you can see that my highlights are not clipping because when I use this technique, I can control the level at where the highlights are without sacrificing the exposure of the whole scene. And for shadows, we will do this, basically apply the same concept and just leave up the blacks, and then you can either pull down the shadows or lift it up. So I'll just make a bit of minor adjustments until it like fits my taste. So this is before and after for contrast. And you can see that I lifted it up without clipping the highlights. I just adjusted a bit more to let it have a nice contrast. So this technique is very useful if you want a very bright image but you don't want to clip it, because usually if you go for broadcast, you can't be clipping your highlights. The channels will reject your advertisement right away. So this area is still a bit bright, and for that I will use my highlights. So what I do here is highlight preservation. So I go to my color picker and then I'll turn off the hue and saturation, but leave the luminance on and put the low to 65. And then we also can add a bit of low soft to make the graduation of this selection quite smooth. And then I'll go into my highlight and just drop it down until somewhere that looks natural. So -30 will do. Yes, so as you can see, the highlight is more preserved in this way without making it look like super artificial. I'll just go back into my contrast to do a bit more adjustments on the brightness. Alright, next is our look. So for this look, the brand is a bit of blue color, if you know Sustagen. Yeah, so the brand is blue, so I'll just go to my gain and pull it towards the blues a bit. So as you can see, before and after, it's quite a huge difference. I also go back in and do a bit more adjustments on the gain. So as you can see, I'm moving the red, only the red channel, because I see that there's a bit too little reds. So next is the skin node. I'll go into my qualifier and then I'm going to qualify their skin. So this is 10-bit footage, so I can just click and drag along the skin. I'll turn on the highlights for you to see where I'm affecting. So here is where I'm affecting, but I only want the lighter parts of the skin. So yeah, that's about it. So when I selected the skin, we also want to add a bit of blur radius to smoothen out the effect. So I'll zoom in a bit for you to see where it's affecting. So I want to smoothen the skin. That's why I just take out a bit of the mid-tone details. So it's just a hint of smoothening, which doesn't look too artificial. Alright, next is the subject. So the subject for this scene is the girl, and of course the main subject is her face. The focus is on her face. So for this, usually maybe I'll do a window around her face, but since her face is quite prominent in this scene, I'll go into the effects tab and go search for face refinement and drag it into the subject node. So over here, I'll first analyze the scene. As you can see, it's tracking her face very smoothly. So Davinci usually doesn't have a problem with tracking stuff. Okay, once that's done, then let's go to the start, and then I'll turn off the overlay so that we can see her face more clearly. So for color grading, I just want to boost her skin, the color of her skin a bit more. So I'll just go to color boost and just boost by a little bit, like 0.03. After that, I want to go to the eye retouching, and then I'll sharpen her eye also just by a little bit. You see, if I go too far, then it look a bit artificial, so I just leave it at 0.01, and also brightening her eyes just by a little bit, maybe 0.03. And then for her eye light, I also want to add a little bit to taste 0.045. And also eye bag remover. This is like the secret sauce to removing your eye bag. So I'll leave it at 0.3. As you can see, the before and after is quite prominent. So for lips retouching, I'll just bump up the saturation by 0.08. This before and after of the subject node. So basically it's almost done, but I just want to add a bit of detail. So I go into my blur page and just pull it down to 0.49. So let's turn off all the nodes and then go through it one by one again. Firstly, you start with the CST and then the primaries, and then we added the contrast, and then we pull down, we preserve the highlights, and then this is a mixer node, and then we added a look, which is the blue tint, and then we soften the skin details, and then we focus in on the subject, and another mixer node, and then we add a bit of detail. So this is gonna be the final look. And then I also did one which is a wider shot. Basically it's the same concept, but then the subject is a bit different in this scene. So let me show you the breakdown. The same, the color space transform, the primaries, the contrast, and then the highlight preservation, a mixer node, and then we added in the look. And then this one also, they have a vignette, so I just counter the vignette a bit by drawing a circle and then brightening the outside of the circle. So this is the vignette effect. And then for the cleanup, this one I focus in on the guy's face because the guy is facing inwards, so his face is a bit dark. So what I did here is just to draw a window on his face and then track that window. As you can see, the tracking goes quite smoothly. And then also the skin, we soften out the skin. And then a mixer node, and then also add a bit of detail in. So this is the grade for the white scene. Alright, so that's about it for this grade, and if you learned something new that you didn't know before, maybe it's about the curves or the editable splines, drop a like, and if you like my channel and you want to see more, then you can subscribe. So I'll see you in the next one. Bye.